I'm Adrienne Giffen, and this is Now You're Talking. Parenting in the digital world can feel overwhelming, especially when you're balancing a career, raising teens and preteens, and trying to keep up with it all. Screens are constant, and sometimes real connection feels out of reach. This podcast is your chance to pause and breathe, a space for stories and insights that bring encouragement, perspective, and the reminder that you are not alone. Parenting in the digital age can feel overwhelming. More screens, more pressure, and more moments where you're not sure what the right response is. Today, I'm joined by Robert Lerro, a clinical social worker and triple P therapist who has spent nearly 2 decades supporting families with practical, evidence-based parenting strategies. In this conversation, we talk about emotional awareness, the power of small changes, and why self-care isn't a luxury for parents, it's essential. Robert shares how different parenting styles shape family dynamics and what actually helps build positive, lasting relationships with our kids. If you've ever asked yourself, what can I do today that really makes a difference? This episode is for you. Let the conversations begin. Rob, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us today and sharing your wisdom about what it's like to be a parenting coach. And you've had lots of depth of experience working with parents and kids of all ages, and just interested to hear your perspective about what it's like to raise kids from a parent's perspective and from a clinical social worker's perspective in this digital era.
Hi, Adrienne. It's great to meet you. Thank you for having me.
Very welcome. What is it like to raise children in this digital era?
My goodness. Parenting's never been easy, but so many times I hear friends and parents and clients share that, how different in so many ways, even though human beings, human nature, it remains pretty constant, but the world has changed so much. And while parenting's never been easy, both the opportunities and the potential pitfalls of the digital age can be mind-blowing. So it gives more tools. Like any neutral tool or any energy source, it can do great good, and it can also wreak havoc. So, yeah, I don't think in some ways, maybe parenting has never been more challenging, perhaps, but it's joys and challenges.
Because you've seen the evolution, because you've been in this industry for long enough to know what it was like just I think, prior to the iPhone, and to the extent.
That's true. Even though my the specific parenting focus has really been about the past 10 years, certainly just as a person, parent, and therapist, seeing that that gradual and then sudden shift with all the things at play.
Yeah, and so how do you go about helping parents to maneuver through all of it?
So in our program, it's a balance between sharing the evidence-based approaches that the Triple P program folks have learned from thousands of parents from around the world over the past 40 years or so, but also tailoring it to the parents. So we, after an introductory kind of interview session where the parents help educate us about what they're dealing with and strengths, challenges, and such. By that second session, we're starting by the end of that second session, we hear from them on anything they want to work on. So while we might not be talking about specifically about navigating through media and such, we're dealing with daily challenges and strengths, but it invariably overlaps, because that's several years ago, during COVID, all of us, our worlds were unceremoniously turned upside down. We all had to learn and adapt to doing almost everything, reassessing and doing almost everything differently.
Yes.
So parents where they're at and seeing what their goals are and helping them with a few of those or supporting them in that.
Yeah. And so in your experience, Rob, so parents talk about different situations, but then is there always sort of an underlying thing that you have to, underlying thing, how that's about as technical as I get, but underlying something that you have to uncover, or do parents just intuitively know?
Well, in this program, like I say, even though at our agency at Community Partners, and they're in Palm Beach County, all of the Triple P providers, we are therapists, but this program per se isn't therapy per se, but we do use a therapeutic approach. But we balance fidelity and flexibility, meaning we share the evidence-based program with them, but also kind of start where they're at and try to focus on their concerns. So in that second session, we start with just some of the common like parent traps that we all fall into. Sometimes some of the typical parent-child interactions that probably aren't so effective or don't work so well. How I give instructions, how I respond, with my child when things are stressful, how I handle maybe discipline or communicating and enforcing limits. How parents and other family members, how are we communicating with each other? All these things that, that impacts our child's learning and development in our relationship. So we start with just those common parent traps that we all fall into. And then by the end of that second session, the parent chooses a few goals that they want to work on, anything they want to do a little more or a little less or a little different.
Oh, okay. Because when I read your website, something really stood out to me, that small changes can make big improvements. Can you give us an example of that, please? It just makes it less intimidating when we can make a small change.
Certainly. So for instance, like so let's say the two really common goals that I know for me, if I'd had a chance to do this program as a parent, years ago and my child was younger.
Yes.
Two of the common goals that I share, with so many parents. One is of trying to reduce like the emotional messages, and the other is noticing good behaviors more. Those are two really common ones. So the idea of an emotional message is just those moments where we're human, we're in a stressful situation, our child's acting out or testing limits. And again, this could be a 2-year-old or it could be 10, 11, or 12.
Yes. And
in that moment, if I'm just reacting, and not giving myself a chance to pause, breathe, and maybe cool down a little bit. If I'm just reacting, I'm much more likely to say out loud those unhelpful automatic thoughts that process through our brains. Things like, he never listens. There she goes again. Why is she always so bad? Whatever it is, those automatic unhelpful thoughts that pop in. By working on our own self-regulation, by working on, and in the program later, we look at helping us parents, have more realistic expectations, starting where our kids are in their development, and working on our own self-calming. Many times it's funny. Many times the very goals that that the parent has for the child, such as, yes, I want my child to calm down when they're upset, or instead of tantruming, being able to self-calm, and then when they're calm, using their big kid words to say what they need. Well, often the parent, I'm working on the same thing as an adult level. I'm working on my own self-regulation of being able to stop, being able to breathe, being able to de-escalate enough. Now, once I'm a little calmer and a little clearer, I can focus on communicating the limit that I need, that I want to get across, but in a more calm way. Parents will often express it as, okay, what do I want to do different? So this next week, I want to yell less, and when I do want my child to do something, I want to communicate that in a more even, calm, and clear way.
That's interesting.
The common goals may be, stop and breathe and be more calm and clear. And parents communicate it in their own way. Some will say, I had a parent recently express that they just wanted to, talk in a more calm and clear and positive way. Or
yes.
So it can be self-regulating and reducing those emotional messages. Some parents, it says, when we look at some of the problems with giving instructions, sometimes it's as simple as avoiding those classic long distance instructions. The one where I'm in the kitchen, I'm doing stuff, my child's in the other part of the house, and I don't have time to stop. So I'm yelling across the house, and then I'm surprised when they're not immediately appearing to do my bidding. So so for some parents, they look at some of those disconnects with giving instructions, whether it's avoiding long distance instructions or being more clear and less vague, or, not giving too many instructions and being more specific. So yeah, it can be any of those and many more. But by the end of that second session, the parent chooses a couple things they just want to work on doing, either a little different or a little more or a little less. Yeah. Doing something more can be an example of a classic parent trap is missing the good behaviors. Oh my gosh, that was one of my one of my.
As you're saying this, I'm feeling, because
truly,
we all go through it as parents. Yeah,
invariably, and in the same way that we've all learned day by day, week by week, month by month, we bump our head and say, oh my gosh, that was kind of, that didn't work well. What do I want to do differently? Triple P is great because we just been learning from parents over these decades and sharing, and then parents can compare. What's been learned in the program with their own experience and decide a few things they want to focus on.
Yeah. It's fascinating. Well, thanks for sharing that, Rob. Because when you were talking about emotional, I'm thinking the parent's emotional, the child's emotional, and then emotional hits emotional, and then there's fireworks, and that never ends.
Absolutely.
And
for sure.
The difficult thing about parenting is lots of us learn how to parent from our own parents, which may not always be the best parenting, but that's our base point. And then we bring our partner into it who has been parented differently, and those two parenting styles can clash. And so then it creates a whole new type of parenting style. I always find it so fascinating.
Yeah, I appreciate your insight. You are, in my experience so far, you are spot on. Of course, we bring all of those aspects with us, and that's all right. I've never met or known or worked with a couple that are going to be automatically on the same level with all those thoughts, beliefs, expectations. And so yes, we bring all that in. We bring our own experiences as well as our that self-talk, those thoughts, those beliefs, those expectations. And, many times those can be, we find those can be counterproductive. But the program just gives parents a chance to, in some simple ways, to assess those and just decide on a few things they want to work on doing differently. Yes. It's great for either individual parents or for couples, and when I say couple, it could be any two parenting partners, whether it's two parents who either may or may not be together, or whether it's a grandparent and a parent, or whatever the family makeup is. Mm-hmm. But it can be great for more than one parent to do the program together to bring those conversations, to the forefront. By going through the program, it can be great because it's not unusual. You'll typically, think about it. We typically, if you have two parents, you've got one who tends to be maybe more clear and firm, maybe authoritative, maybe strict, depending on how you measure that, and another that the other parent maybe tend to be more easygoing, maybe less focused on rules, more adaptable, more kind of laissez-faire. Yeah. With Triple P, it helps parents kind of create that healthy balance between, giving our kids what they need, giving that attention, that affection that, that we want to give them, noticing the good behaviors, being purposeful about engaging them in fun and interesting activities that, by themselves or with, maybe with, if there's other siblings and with us, but also, building our relationship as we're engaging in this thing. So it can help parents, on the one hand, focus on the relationship building and the fun, effective teaching approaches, but also at the same time, we can still be calm and clear and consistent when it comes to communicating and following through with limits. And again, everything in the program comes from what we've learned by listening to and learning from thousands of parents from around the world over these past 4 decades plus. So it's full circle. And again, parents compare that to their own experiences and decide what to focus on.
Well, and it sounds like it's a non-judgmental perspective. And I like that, Triple P, it's positive parenting program, but it's positive parenting. So giving parents the skills. You mentioned at the beginning that parenting is more complex. What are some, do you have any little, you said that there are little things that you can do. What do the kids want? Like, how do if you were to talk to the kids, what do the kids want more of from their parents?
And sure. And depending on where the child's at in their development, they may express it in different ways. But based on their experiences, again, listening to and learning from parents over the years, that research, they talk about the 5 principles of positive parenting. And I think that the key one that I think may address what you're asking is what he calls it having a positive learning environment. But it's the 2 main components of that are simply, can I stop what I'm doing and respond in the moment when my child's trying to get my attention? Now, of course, when they're infants, whenever they're awake, we're pretty much needing to be there, respond.
Yes.
As they gradually grow and develop, they're able to maybe for longer periods of time, little by little, self-play more, do more of their own thing. But, throughout their development over the years, the challenge is Triple P calls it quality time. But what they're talking about is not, sometimes we think of quality time as setting aside times to do those fun activities, special play times. Those are fabulous. Mm-hmm. But what they're actually talking about with quality time is the idea of just those times where I'm in the same space as my child, maybe any throughout the day, whether it's a weekday or the weekend. And I'm, we're all multitasking. Can I pause what I'm doing and just answer the child's question or give them that attention or see what they need or clarify what the choices are or,
mm-hmm.
and if I'm on a phone call or a video chat, many times if we're doing video sessions, sometimes a parent, beautifully demonstrates being able to pause. Excuse me, Rob. Answer the child's question, remind them what the choices are, connect them with either a person or an activity over there. And they may need to do that several times throughout, the session. But the 2 aspects of a positive learning environment, one is that responding in the moment and connecting and hearing them, seeing them. And then the other one is noticing the good behaviors.
The good behaviors.
And with behavior specific praise. And the program really fleshes that out because sometimes parents have, especially different perspectives. Sometimes different cultures might have different ideas about that, especially different life experiences. Why should I praise my child for doing what they're supposed to do? Which is, a fair question. But the answer is because it's really effective. And those 2 things, again, they're stopping and responding in the moment, which sounds simple, but neither, looking back as a young parent, neither one of those came naturally for me. I had to work on both of them.
Yeah.
Thank goodness my wife has been a career early education preschool teacher. And
yes,
at least I was smart enough to listen to her. And I can remember times where our toddler daughter, I'd come home, I'd greeted her and I thought I'm doing great, And I'm over here maybe on my laptop doing some work. She's over to the daughter's to the side, playing. And I'm thinking she's just, doing parallel play and she's fine. And my wife would have to quietly come, Rob, do you not see she's trying to get your attention? She's trying to play with you. I'm like, oh. So thankfully, so many times parents in the program are learning these through experience quicker than I did, which is great. But those 2 alone, as going back to your question about what do kids probably express that they want, if we can do those 2 things, if I can respond, and hear them, and connect with them and noticing the good behaviors. But those 2 are both unspeakably relationship building and also boost development, social, emotional, language skills, confidence, independence, just doing those 2 things. So those, that's kind of one of the core areas that we've learned from parents over the years.
So couple of things. Can you share some examples of good behavior that could go across the board in terms of background?
Sure. So the way Dr. Sanders and his team with this program started decades ago at University of Queensland in Australia, the way they've worded it over the years is, when you see a behavior that you like, there was something that you want your child to be doing, especially for parents that might have some reservations about the behavior-specific praise, it can be helpful to start with positive exceptions. For instance, something that a positive behavior your child does sometimes that you'd like them to do more. So, for instance, maybe a common one is, cleaning up after cleanup time. Whether they're 3 or whether they're 12, that can be an issue. If the parent identifies that as something they'd like the child to do more, and often we help the parent with ways to notice the child's behavior, to really tune in, such as behavior tracking, like notice what are we actually seeing instead of just doing what comes naturally, which is just our kind of our emotional responses over time. But by noticing the child's behavior up, when are they actually doing, maybe doing these behaviors? But going back to the behavior specific praise, it's just saying when you see your child doing something that you like, can I think, what is she doing that I like? And how do I say that in a few words? Whether it's, so catching them doing good. This time the child did clean up and I didn't even have to ask them this time. Or you've got two siblings that like any good card carrying member of the brothers sisters union, they squabble a lot, right?
Right.
But when I can, catch them, see that, oh my gosh, they've been playing this game for like 10 minutes and they're sharing and they're taking turns. And so I want to acknowledge that. Often the way a lot of our brains work, it may naturally come out as, oh, thank goodness, see that, you guys don't have to fight all the time. And it comes out, or thank you for finally cleaning up, or, thank you for finally playing quieter so I can do this meeting.
Right.
Instead of that, the challenge is to actually say out loud what they're doing well. So acknowledging, look at you guys, you're taking turns, you're sharing, that's fantastic. Thank you for putting that away. That makes things so much easier for me.
Yes. So without that sort of backhanded sort of, well, great to do this, but but you didn't do it all the other times.
Right. Well, and again, I think that falls into, because speaking from my experience, sometimes that falls into the category of those automatic, maybe unhelpful thoughts where we're just saying out loud what's popping in our head. It's like, oh my gosh, I didn't think you'd ever do that. Thank you for finally doing that. It's like, okay, it's okay. We learn as we go. It's like, okay, what are they doing well right now that I'd like them to do more of? Let me say that. So
it does start with awareness, doesn't it? I mean, we need to be self-aware in order to make this happen. So help me, Rob, with this. When you talked about being on a call like this, so let's say I have one of my granddaughters or grandchildren come up and they interrupt. And as a boomer, I would say, okay, I'm on a call right now. Wait your turn. Are you saying now that to be a better parent than certainly I was, to interrupt our meeting
I'm sorry.
No, I help you with this because I'm
that's a great question. So without saying a simple yes or no, one thing that helps is, first of all, to kind of structure for success. And I know it's not magical because sometimes you can let the child know, here's what's going on.
Yeah.
And you give them something to do while they're waiting. Maybe if there's another person that you connect them with, connecting them with a person or an activity, but sending kind of structuring and setting them up for success at a time, can help. But so it's a common goal, of, for helping our kids learn, of helping them learn how to, see that, the parent or grandparent is having a conversation and, you may be teaching them to say, excuse me, excuse me, Nana, or, so that's something you may, you're working on with them over time, which is fantastic. But the parent decides what that's going to look like. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're not suggesting the parents cancel the meetings. Sometimes, you're in the middle of something and you need to do that. But at least if you can at least take a few seconds to acknowledge and to remind them what the choices are, or to reconnect them with that activity or that person. One of the video examples is that we share sometimes is a mom on the playground with her child, and she's there to play with them, but she gets a call that she has to take. So instead of doing the thing that comes naturally that we've all done, we trigger that pursuit retreat cycle where I'm just saying, oh, later, and I'm walking away and the child's chasing me, like in circles around the playground. Instead of doing that, this mom does a beautiful job. She just pauses the phone call just to take a few seconds to let the child know what's going on, or that she's on the call. And then she does connect him with either a person or an activity over there. Maybe she waves, and then she goes to the side, finishes the call, and then puts the phone away when she can and reconnect. So in your example, of course, parents are going to adapt to the reality of the situation. So you can do a lot to set up for success ahead of time, but and there are unique exceptions, that come up. Mm-hmm. But both setting up for success ahead of time and then being able to, and sometimes the responding might be reminding them, what they're supposed to be doing, or reminding them of what, and then, what they'll be able to do after we're done. But at least taking those few seconds to connect and to answer or to clarify, what the choices are, and to, or sometimes to redirect. But because when we look at accidentally rewarding negative behaviors, in the first, in that one of the early parts of the program, we talked about, the parent traps. So it can be, sometimes, every behavior is for a purpose. So kids, they learn what works. So, if we're often, a lot of behavior is, behaviors can be because the activity itself is enjoyable. Sometimes they're just trying to connect. They're trying to get our attention. That's a big part of it.
Yeah.
They need our attention.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're trying to avoid, something. Sometimes there's something they want to do. That sometimes they're just expressing themselves. So all behavior is there's some need they're trying to fulfill. And our challenge as parents, of course, is we're trying to help them learn to get their needs met, but in more okay ways.
Yes.
But the idea is just to at least you might respond and remind them what the choices are. And then later in the program, if the child continues interrupting, we help parents with communicating the limit and then following through on that. Following through with the consequence if they're not following instructions. But that's later in the program.
Right.
But it does start. But it starts with generally responding in the moment, and at least it can be as simple as letting them know what the choices are or reconnecting them and redirecting them.
Yes. So when you're talking, Robert, it takes a lot of patience to be a parent. And so what I hear is it's all about repetition then and consistency. So is that right? Like when you set them up, you set kids up for success by saying, if I'm on the phone or if I'm on the thing, these are the behaviors that I expect. If I'm on the Zoom call or whatever, is that correct? These are the behaviors
that can be part of it.
So.
Sure. And it does. And of course, when we look at one of those key parenting principles is realistic expectations. And we look at child development and where is my child at in their development. So
yes,
communicating that, to a 3-year-old, is probably, can be different in a lot of ways, from communicating that to an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old. But, sure, routines and consistency, no question. Because all of us, we develop behavior patterns. Again, kids are smart and they're just trying to get their needs met. So they learn what works.
Yes.
They learn what works to get my attention. So again, if I'm not paying attention when they're doing all the things we want them, when they are asking nicely, when they are waiting, if I'm not noticing that and acknowledging that, often they can learn to act up to get our attention, because they learn, if I'm on my laptop and my child's, saying, "Excuse me, Dad," and I'm saying, "Yeah, just a minute," and I'm taking a long time, and for a 2 or 3-year-old, a minute or two can be a long time. But if I'm not responding when they're doing the things I want them to do more of, they may accidentally learn that what's the most effective way to get my attention. So they may, my child may whack me on the arm or scream, "Dad," and then I respond, "What?" And I respond, "What?" And they're like, "Oh, this works. I'm going to do more of this." So,
that makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely.
Yes. It sounds so simple in the moment because we're bringing our emotion. We're pulled in many directions. It's not. It's not simple at all, but it is being aware before those moments happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So knowing what and I'm saying from a parenting perspective, from a professional perspective, looking back and all that you've seen, what would you do the same and encouraging other parents?
Did you mean as a parent myself or both as a supporter of parents?
It could be whatever. I always like to know, what pops into your head first, because that's really probably the most relevant. You as a parent, but you also because you coach parents. I'm sure you've seen it all. So knowing from your perspective, personally, professionally, what are some things or one or two things that you would do the same, and what would you do different?
It's funny because in Triple P, we in the later sessions, we check in with the parent once they've got a few goals or things they're working on, and we do ask them first, what are they doing that's working? What are they doing that's effective? What are they doing better? For instance, the parent that's wanting to practice pausing and breathing and cooling down first, so that they can, instead of just reacting emotionally, they can communicate the limit in a more even and calm and clear way, we find out some positive exceptions for that. What are a few times that you did better this week, and then we go to the what's maybe something that wasn't working or something that you'd like to do different. So we always want to start with the positives. But truth be told, at this moment, it's easier for me to go to the what do I want to do different. And I think for one thing, I do wish I'd had a chance to do a positive parenting program like Triple P. I wish I had taken the time to do that when our daughter was a little younger, because it just would have shortened my learning curve in so many ways. I mean, it's all right because we do learn and grow day by day and
yes,
week and month and year. But as simple as that, I wish I'd plugged into that, that ocean of human and parent experience to start the work sooner. And then implementing a few of those things. Again, the two biggest ones for me that I had to work on was that self-regulating was over to, working on knowing my triggers, developing, increasing my coping and self-calming skills, learning, what it feels like in my body when I can feel myself, escalating and finding those things that help me stop and breathe or step away, or catching those automatic unhelpful thoughts and focusing on what just meeting the child in the moment and helping them do the right thing. But it all starts with staying calm. So I wish I'd started it sooner, but, and I think one of the things that I like was that, before coming to Triple P, I was able to learn a lot, both with my early work when I first moved from laboratory medicine in the early 90s to an entry-level position working with folks living with HIV and AIDS. I learned so much with that, and I'm glad I was able to spend time learning in that environment, in that community, and then later becoming a child and family health therapist and doing that work, and then doing some, having some other roles, and then eventually coming to the Triple P positive parent and being able to kind of start where it counts, yes. Get in there with the parents and support and encourage them.
Well,
yeah.
As we're talking, I'm thinking parents need such positive reinforcement, just like the kids. Often, especially in this digital world, we feel disconnected and like we're on this island by ourselves, but really we're all just trying to figure it out. But we need support because it's not easy.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. And and one of those one of the 5 principles of positive parenting that I think is probably the most important is taking care of yourself as a parent, or self-care. And that includes not just certainly the self-nurturing and the self-pampering sometimes, but, connecting with our supports, whether it's connecting with whatever community we have, or, some parents, especially probably in the past 5 or 10 years, so many parents maybe have moved or had major changes in the family and may find themselves largely alone, and sometimes have to, become creative and purposeful about, maybe slowly, cautiously, purposefully expanding their supports,
But yeah, and I agree. Connection is key, and being able to communicate with one another is so essential for our own growth as parents. May I ask you a couple of questions off of my board game, Now You're Talking, Rob?
That'd be great.
Is all about connection and getting people talking again, and of all generations and friends and as well. You don't need to be a parent to play this, but when you put generations together, it's very magical. What message have you received, Rob, from a stranger that had an impact on you?
Wow, that's a tough one. But what message have I received from a stranger? That had an impact on me. These are,
I always think, as you're thinking, there are, we run into strangers all the time.
Sure.
And when we're open to hearing messages, usually they're all around us. And
sure. But I remember back in my more active jogging days, I remember jogging through a local park, and an older gentleman, as we passed, very kindly but firmly emphasized that he said, "Take care of your knees." Charge. That was the word I was looking for. He charged me. Take care of your knees, and I said, "Thank you for that." And he was right. So yeah. So I shifted from the asphalt to the grass, but that's the first one that pops in.
Well, listen, that's interesting. It's amazing to me how we do carry these stranger comments, and whether they're from teachers or from just sort of chance comments that parents make to kids, that we carry them and they become part of who we are. So I'll try to make this one a little bit easier. What would your younger self be most surprised about your life today?
What would my younger self be most surprised about my life today? I think that instead of following my earlier thoughts or aspirations about maybe being a journalist or going into advertising, or perhaps that fantasy of a movie lover of being able to make a living, writing movie reviews, that I was actually happy and helpful at working with people and families, and that it was as helpful for me in my growth and development as a person. In the same way that with our kids, we're learning together. In the same way, this work has helped me continue to learn how to listen and to connect and to keep growing. So I think maybe he would look and go, seriously? Social worker? Huh? Well, he seems happy. Okay.
So I wanted to ask you, so this is a perfect segue. You talked about working in the 90s in HIV and AIDS and with people with HIV and AIDS. How did that, what was the turning point, and how did that contribute to your career path? To what brought you to where you are today? And was that, in fact, a stepping stone? I'm always interested to connect the dots from a career perspective.
Well,
and how that happened. Yeah, how it contributed to who you are.
Sure. Well, somehow I was back in the late 80s and early 90s. I actually was working as a laboratory technologist. I was in blood banking. I worked in a laboratory doing blood banking work. And that's another story of how my trajectory led me there. But I realized for a number of reasons that wasn't where I was both, growing and maybe contributing in a way that I could contribute. So as I looked for something, maybe in the field of public health, something where I could connect with people and work with folks, that opportunity came up, and it was life changing. It was. Especially during that period of the early to mid season and over about 9 years of when I started working as a case manager, helping clients connect with services, helping with advocacy, helping with medications adherence, whatever was helpful. Things shifted from being HIV and AIDS being viewed as a likely death sentence to what researchers and folks in the community had hoped and worked and prayed for, which was that it could actually become a manageable chronic illness, such as diabetes or MS. But at the time, working with clients, that you're, developing working relationships with, and periodically losing them and learning a lot about life and loss and adapting and, broken people connecting and lifting each other up and helping each other grow. But it's just a beautiful thing to see how what's all evolved and how have shifted. So it's, in such an encouraging way.
That's what you're doing with parents. You're lifting them up and you're connecting and helping them to feel better about themselves. What are some words of wisdom, Rob, that you can share to help parents navigate this complex world that we're in?
Sure. When I was thinking about this, the thing that I keep coming back to, that parents and families keep reteaching me, is that what we know of as the Serenity Prayer. And I know I tend to try to avoid, concepts that are thought of as cliches, but this is so real and practical and powerful. And, of course, from our friends in the recovery community, but it can be applied in so many different ways, regardless of one's spiritual beliefs. But that when I see parents focusing on, dealing with just, intense stressors, changes, challenges, and getting the help to navigate those, focusing on, what can they do today? What can they do today? And taking it one step at a time.
Yeah.
During COVID, I felt like I was learning a lot about that valuable concept of next best things. I can't do this, but what can I do? The classic person who during COVID, somebody that had a routine of going to the gym, 3 or 4 times a day, and suddenly the gyms are all closed. And we saw parents being creative and purposeful, like, what can we do? So, maybe, taking the child and the dog for a walk at the same time, or a family, once finding a park that was open and maybe going to the park together. And while one parent plays with the kids on the playground, the other parent is on the fitness trail, and then they tag team, whatever it is, but being creative and purposeful about, taking care of themselves and each other, doing next best things, but, starting with what they can actually do. And not trying to do it all at once.
Yes, and cut themselves some slack. It's not easy being a parent, and I find that we can be really tough on ourselves.
Absolutely, yes.
So,
your insights are powerful and right on target, I think. Absolutely, that's the nature of it, and that's why the self-care and the supports are so important.
Yes.
But realizing another nice thing about the program is that we help parents see the a lot of the things that they're doing that are working, that are effective, and just give them a chance to tweak 1 or 2 things that can help shift the communication.
Yeah. So not only do we focus on the negative things, we focus on the positive, like your program says, and sometimes it's difficult to see the positive over the challenges that we endure.
Of course, because the challenges, or maybe the obnoxious behavior or whatever it is, it's louder and it impacts us more emotionally. It reminds me of in our driving habits. So how often we notice the times that we get caught by the light, or the times that we get caught in the traffic, and sometimes we skip over the times when we have an easy drive, and we miss that. It's not a perfect example, because in that case, that's something that we don't have control over. But the idea is with ourselves, you've got to notice, start with, what are we doing that's working, and acknowledging that. And then once we do choose a goal, acknowledging progress towards that, both, in our child's behavior and in our own behavior. Because how do we move forward unless we're acknowledging, that we're making progress here? This is measurable progress. I'm noticing the good behaviors more, or I praise them more often than I used to, or in those 5 instances, normally I would have blown my top, every time. This time I kept calm, through 3 of them, and one of them I caught myself midstream, and then the other one I had to apologize and reconnect, and we started over. But it starts with noticing what we're doing well and doing more of it.
Yes.
And then just day by day.
Yeah, day by day. Well, Rob, thank you very much for sharing your wisdom today. I really appreciate it. And I know it will impact other parents and just give them a chance to reflect and grow.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
My pleasure. This conversation with Rob is a reminder that effective parenting doesn't come from doing more. It comes from doing things with intention. From emotional awareness to behavior-specific praise, Robert shows us how small, thoughtful shifts can create real change at home. And just as importantly, he reminds us that caring for ourselves is part of caring for our children. Parenting in the digital era isn't about perfection. It's about connection, consistency, and meeting each moment as it comes. If this episode resonated with you, share it with another parent who could use the reminder that they're not alone. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future conversations. You've been listening to Now You're Talking. Parenting with a busy career while guiding kids through the lure of screens isn't easy, but meaningful connection is always worth it. Take a moment to start a conversation with someone you care about. It could be the highlight of their day. Until next time, let the conversations begin. Now you're talking.
I'm Michelle Abraham, and we are honored to have Adrienne Giffen's Now You're Talking podcast on our High Vibe Podcast Network. For more high vibe shows like hers, head on over to highvibepodcastnetwork.com and grab your free gift from our gift vault from all of our hosts. Until then, stay high vibe.